Welcome back to Pop Culture Yearbook once again. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. This is 1989, the final chapter. I am Brad.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Gift.
And tonight we are going to discuss our bonus choice, which is the movie Heathers from 1989. So, Pete, do you want to start off with some info you might have about Heathers? Because you're always good at finding fun facts.
Well, I mean, I'll just start off with what I kind of thought about the movie. I absolutely love this movie. I remember seeing it when it was on HBO or Showtime or whatever it was back in 1990 when we first got cable. It was on all the time. I remember watching it more than once, but I don't remember the movie that well, or I didn't until I rewatched it again. And I thought it was just a lot of fun. The way that it kicks off with the croquet scene and the use of Que Sera Sera as sort of the theme song, that was a lot of fun. The one-liners stood out to me that like the totally Valley Girl talk, kind of like, oh, how very, and what's your damage?
So did you find in your research that a lot of that slang was written for this movie? Because they didn't want it to get stuck in time and be dated, and so they made up their own lingo for this movie that could just be from whatever, that wasn't like stuck in like 1985 or whatever.
It seemed like it was pretty cleverly done, and it
So
seemed like it
what's your
would have fit in
damage?
perfectly.
Can we jam? It'll be very the famous line, F me gently with a chainsaw.
With a crowbar, wasn't it?
No, with a chainsaw.
Oh, I thought there was okay.
So these are things they put in like because they wanted it to be this more of a timeless feel to it.
Did you notice the shoulder pads on the first Heather?
Yes.
It looked like she was a linebacker.
Right.
That's a little dated, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
the fashion was definitely dated.
Yeah, but I think that was deliberately done. I mean, the expanded shoulder pads or the exaggerated shoulder pads just to make her stand out more. And
were hers bigger or different than the others?
It seemed like hers were a little more pointed.
Well, then I think you've probably caught onto something there.
And they were just like so exaggerated. I thought that it was like it had to be intentionally done to make her like stand out as being like the power girl. I thought that the movie was like the ultimate dark comedy, right? I don't know if the movie would get made today just because it sort of glorifies suicide.
Right.
I think if a movie came out today, it would just be like so controversial. Everybody would be in an uproar over it.
Well, I think it was actually a little controversial even then, but that's the thing. So first of all, did you know that they wanted Stanley Kubrick to direct this movie?
I did read that, yes.
So that gives you like the idea of what they were going for, and
right.
They get him. And it was made as a contrast to the popular John Hughes movies of the time, which are much more upbeat, and I mean they're not all upbeat maybe, but realistic and everything. But this is really dark satire, and some people don't get that, and it can be uncomfortable to watch, I thought, at times, this movie. And like you said, people might say they're glorifying suicide, but they're not. It's making fun of all the right things. It makes fun of homophobia too, but sometimes that goes over people's heads. They don't get it, or it's taken the wrong way. And those are topics that are controversial to get into and make fun of. And so if you get it like you did, Pete, then you can love that. But that doesn't work for everybody. They don't like that kind of humor. And so it is a really, real obviously dark movie.
What it's really doing is that it's mocking the hypocrisy of people when they, they'll make fun of each other, or they'll, they're bullies and everything. But then when somebody dies, and in this case it was suicide, then it's all about they become heroes, and they're like, look what great people they were, and all of that kind of stuff. And that's done multiple times in the movie, and that's really the baseline for the whole plot. But Yeah, I absolutely love both Christian Slater and Winona Ryder in this movie. Her performance was extraordinary. She was 15 years old when this movie was made.
She would have been probably 17 when it was made. It came out the year she turned 18.
I think she was 15 in Beetlejuice, and then this was like 2 years later, or a year later.
Yep.
Okay. One fact that I actually found was that at first she didn't get the role because they said that she wasn't pretty enough for it.
Yeah, I saw that.
In her own words, she said, "You have to understand that I actually looked almost like my Beetlejuice character because she was that goth character and everything." Yep. Then she went and had a makeover, and eventually she got the part. So I thought that was an interesting little fun fact there.
Speaking of parts, did you have this? So Shannen Doherty, this is one of her first movies where people would see her, and she's always been considered difficult. But it was interesting in this because she was difficult in the fact that she did not want to swear. She was brought up so religious that she didn't really like the character, and she didn't want to swear and say some of the things that the character said.
Yeah.
And so that made it difficult for her. And then and they thought that she didn't really understand the character and she didn't really get what they were going for, which actually ended up kind of working out because it almost made her, the way she played the character, even better that way. So
yeah,
what I would have considered for Shannen Doherty the reason to be difficult, because she seems like somebody that would cuss up a storm, but apparently that's not the way she was at that time.
The one line that she had that just stood out, that just hung in the air for me, was when the other girl is going to run to the bathroom, and then Shannen Doherty is like, "She's going to cry." The way that she said it, it just hung there, and I was like thinking about it the next day. It was just it just stuck in my head, and I could not get out of it. The way she said it, it was perfectly done for what it was, but it just came across as totally snobbish and bitchy, which is exactly what she was going for there. But it was just like the way she delivered it, something about it. I don't know. But you guys remember that line?
I actually do not.
Really?
Yeah, it's when Heather runs into the. She's gonna take the pills, correct? She's in her cheerleading outfit, and she's gonna take the pills, and Veronica runs after her and makes.
Veronica goes and chases her down, and she's in the classroom. She's like in the front row, the front desk in the classroom, and that was like somebody said, "Where's she going?" I think it was the teacher or whatever.
Yep.
Where's she going? And then she goes, "She's going to cry."
Speaking of casting, fittingly, Heather Graham she wanted to be the main Heather. That would have been the role she would have had, but her parents wouldn't let her be in this movie because they were not supportive of this movie and her being in it. So she would have been, or could have been, somebody else that was in it that you would have recognized.
And her name is Heather. Yeah, that would have
been fittingly.
That would have worked out great.
That's what I meant.
What other famous actor auditioned for the role of JD, which was Christian Slater?
Brad Pitt.
That is correct. I can't imagine. I thought Slater was absolutely perfect for this role. And he said, in his own words, he was trying to go for a Jack Nicholson feel, which Slater does.
He sounds just like the Joker.
Do you remember when Christian Slater was going to be the next Jack Nicholson?
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. But he did. He intentionally tried to play it like him in this movie, but the comparisons were nonstop at that time because he kind of looked like him and he talked like him.
Well, that was one of the notes
in this movie.
One of the notes I made was he talks just like Jack's Joker from the Batman that came out the same year.
Wait till they get a load of me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they decided that Slater made he had a better look for a serial killer, which is perfect. Brad Pitt, they said, was just too nice, and he didn't have that sort of attitude and that sort of look or anything. So,
and I guess I don't know what he had been in, but it seems like Christian Slater was a pretty known actor by this time too, and Brad Pitt not at all. So,
but didn't Brad Pitt play kind of a dark character in California?
That wasn't until like 1995.
Oh,
Brad Pitt's big first on scene was Thelma and Louise,
right?
In 91.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he would have been way too young for. I don't know. That's just my thought.
So I mean, nobody knew who he was when this movie was made. So
Sure.
you'd
Well,
think-
nobody know who Doherty was either when this movie was made.
No, but she wasn't the main star though either.
That's true.
That's not
That's
why
true.
she was in there.
Right.
Good point.
Another little fact that I did come across is that, and I can't call this a fun fact because this is sort of sad, actually. Kim
Okay.
Walker,
Yeah.
who plays Heather Chandler, one of her famous lines early in the movie says, "Did you have a brain tumor for breakfast?"
Yep.
Well, she did die of a brain tumor at age 32 in real life. So
12 years later.
interesting.
She didn't eat
little
it for
tip.
breakfast, though.
I don't.
I remember when that happened, and I mean, it was a very interesting to go back and find that fact again. That's really eerie. Here's a fun fact. So they go to Westerberg High, and so as I'm watching this, I'm like, that's got to be named after Paul Westerberg from The Replacements. That's just too big of a coincidence in 1989. And
Right.
I found that it was because Winona Ryder's favorite band was The Replacements, and so it became Westerberg High that they attended.
Oh,
Huh.
That was
that
fun.
is-
I think that's a
What'd you-
great fact.
What'd you guys think of the pink kitchen?
The pink. Who's? Oh, is
The
that?
pink
Was that
early in the
Heather's-
movie when
Oh.
Christian Slater and Winona Ryder are going and they're figuring out how to kill the girl and what if they're just going to make her drink something or what. And eventually Slater does of course get the Drano or
Drano.
whatever it was that they
Yep.
eventually used. But when they're having that whole conversation, that pink kitchen just really stood out.
I
to
guess
me.
I can kind of picture it, but I didn't think anything
Oh,
of it.
yeah.
Probably just because I thought it was the 80s.
Right. That's kind of what I thought too.
Speaking
And-
of the 80s, even though this movie is like making fun of homophobia, it's still uncomfortable to watch because every 80s movie, aside from having nudity in it, they always use the other F word too.
Right.
And they
Yes.
use it in here. And it does get a little uncomfortable, even though you know that they're not like, you know what they're going for, but it still just becomes a little uncomfortable and it just feels different watching it now. Because you don't
Right.
even if you just don't see stuff like that anymore.
It's
So-
become it's become like the N word, but back then it wasn't thought of quite in that same vein as it is now. But
No, it's used in
right.
every movie back then. So I've watched all these movies with my son, who's in 9th grade, who is gay, and it doesn't seem to bother him. But every time you watch something like this, I'm like, oh boy, it's kind of uncomfortable. But I don't know, he seems to think it's fine and understands it and deals with it. So
Well,
if he
and
does, then it's fine.
To me, one of the super creepy parts of this movie is when they go to the college party, and just the thought that these college guys hitting on these high school girls is just makes my skin crawl.
Well, and the girls are just expected to go, and
Right.
service them, and
Right.
it is creepy.
Oh, yeah. Not a big fan of that. But again,
Kind of
it's-
like Bruce Wayne getting Vicky Vale all liquored up and taking her to bed.
yes.
Yes. Previous
So-
episode.
One of the scenes that I LOL'd in was at Kurt and Ram's funeral, how they have their football
The helmets.
on.
That's like the best scene. Just
Yes.
The helmets on their heads is what a visual.
It's so perfect. Oh, it's so funny. And another little note that I wrote down was, of course, Kurt has a football phone.
Oh,
When
did he?
he's talking to Veronica, I believe, when she calls to set up the rendezvous with Kurt and Ram.
Well, and then
what
you
he's-
have the dad at the
talking on.
funeral too, who would not be okay with it finding out his son was gay.
Yep.
But now that they're dead, he's I'm proud of my dead gay son.
it's part of that whole hypocrisy that they're playing into it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, that's
And
what Winona Ryder mentioned.
Everybody's
at the
okay with
funeral.
it now, but the next day, if somebody who's alive, they'll make fun of them and they'll ruin their lives if they can. It's
Mhm.
so.
Well, and the fact that mineral water is what puts it over the top is that you're gay.
Right.
So funny. And the cops find the mineral water and they just pick it out of the bag, and one looks at the other and they just know that's what it means if you're drinking mineral water.
But that's funny because again, so I brought up how this is the time when we bought our convenience store. Clearly, Canadian was all the rage. Everybody drank it back then. That had nothing to do with sexuality.
Right.
I
love
maybe should
Clearly
point this
Canadian.
out on air, but I'm drinking a mineral water right now as we speak.
Yes, you are.
Well,
And
don't
you look
let somebody
fabulous
find you
doing it.
fat, Pete.
Was
So-
anybody else impressed with the girls' croquet skills? Because they really have some sick croquet skills.
Well, I was going to ask the question, why is croquet such a big part of this movie? Is there some kind of symbolism there that you think that I'm missing? Is it just a random thing they included because it's such a big deal and it's so weird? Nobody.
The only
thinks
thing I
it's
can
just-
think
It's
of,
like prestigious or like something that rich people play
I
a lot.
suppose is that
prim
all
and
it
proper.
is?
It's something that, rich people, prim and proper. It shows the dichotomy between the outward appearance and what they're actually like on the inside. I don't know.
You just dropped dichotomy in the middle of this podcast. Wow.
That's right. And the episode before,
use
what
it
did we
correctly.
cover? We covered Roadhouse. That's right. try to figure me out.
It's a wide range.
Because I get what you're saying, but like we all grew up playing croquet. It's just a regular yard game that anybody had and played. So I don't really associate it with like rich people, although I guess I can at the same time. So I
Well,
didn't
it
know if
was
there was
played
anything
by-
more to it that you might have caught on that I missed out on there.
It was played by 15th century dukes and ladies on the English countryside. Hold on a second. Let me see if I've got more on this.
Wow, he really
Oh, I
did-
don't.
does his
Oh.
research.
You had talked about casting, so I was watching this, and Dennis, one of the students, we see him. It looks like they're putting together the school paper. He's played by Phil Lewis, and he played another character in a show that I loved. He was Hooch in Scrubs, and as everybody knows, Hooch is crazy.
I thought you were going to
I
say
love Scrubs, but I don't
Like, that's
remember
not right.
who Hooch is. I'm sure I would the second I saw him, but
I just want to throw that in there.
that was good.
another question I had besides croquet, that was just so random. When she writes in her diary, she wears a monocle?
Yeah, the whole monocle
A
thing.
monocle? What's
Yeah,
up
she
with that?
carries it with her at school too. She had it at school.
It's just some of those things are just like a little odd. I mean, they're interesting and unique, and they kind of fit anyway. But you just don't really understand what they're going for, I guess. Maybe nothing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the parts I enjoyed was so Winona Ryder. We said she was in Beetlejuice, but then you obviously probably noticed Gifford? I'm sure that Otho
Yes.
is in this movie too.
Yes, he's the preacher. Yep.
You know who Otho is? Pete?
Oh yes, I do remember. I that was the one where I was watching the movie. I'm like, where have I seen him before? And now that was it. Because
So he
yeah,
was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So also in Christian Slater's character, it's kind of complicated and hard to figure out what you're supposed to think of him. Because at first, I mean, he's like an anti-hero, right? Like you kind of root for him and you think, well, yeah, we get what he's doing. He's obviously not a very nice guy, but you know, they're sick of the high school thing. But in the end, to me anyway, he turns out to be just as bad as the jocks. I mean, he's way over the line.
way
There's
worse.
nothing purposeful in what he's doing. He's just a really bad guy. But my son, who watched this with me, did point out that even though he's very psychotic at the end, it's not all his fault because he was ruined by his parents. When you
Right.
see the influence his parents had on him, that's what led him to be that way. And so he kind of defended him to a point that it wasn't
that's
all
what
his
he even
fault.
says. That's interesting that he brought that up.
Yeah, I was impressed
Yeah.
with that one.
Well,
But he does say that he when he's down in the boiler room with Winona Ryder or Veronica, and he kind of explains that a little bit, like nobody ever loved me, or
Yeah.
you know, he
Mhm.
goes off on that little tangent.
right.
So
Did anybody like the line where Winona Ryder, she's writing her diary right before she stages her suicide, talking about JD, where no one can stop him, not the FBI, the CIA, or the PTA.
yeah, Yeah, I caught that. That was funny. The one other little fun fact that I had here, when they're planning to go kill the football players, or she doesn't know that they're planning to kill the football players, but that's what JD is doing. He tells Veronica that he's using the German, and I'm going to butcher this, but it's
Yep.
like the Ich Luge bullets,
Yep.
if I pronounce that right, which
Oh
is
yeah,
German.
and they don't kill you. I mean, yeah, right.
Right.
Right. He says they don't kill you; they'll scare the shit out of you or whatever. But Ich Luge is German for I'm lying.
Oh,
So if you knew you're German, you would have picked up on that right away. I just happened to find that as a fun fact. I can't speak any German, but
Dankeschön for bringing that to my attention, Pete.
de nada.
so the original. The original ending of this movie had him actually blowing up the whole high school. Did you find that?
Yeah, I did. And then did you find the next piece?
That
Or-
there was a prom scene in heaven?
Yes, that's what I was gonna.
Yeah. So they had changed that. It wasn't. I mean, it's obviously dark, but the visual of her all blown up and like with the cigarette in her mouth at the end. That's a pretty great ending and probably a much better decision.
Well, the way
She
that
looks like-
she puts a cigarette in her mouth and she knows what's coming, and the explosion just lights her cigarette. That was perfect.
Well, she looks like Wile E. Coyote.
Yes.
Just haggard, from being bomb being blown up in her face.
That's exactly what she looks like. It's a cartoon.
Or when she burns herself with the cigarette lighter and JD bends over and lights his cigarette off her hand. He doesn't grab the cigarette lighter. He lights it off her burning hand. Oh, my God.
And then it was a fitting end when she walks in looking all like that, and then she grabs the red bow and takes it.
Oh yeah, I love that. I forgot
that
that
was
she
a
takes the
beautiful
bow.
one.
She's the new lead, and that's good.
One of the things that I had written down, the scene where the cops find Kurt and Ram, and the one cop picks up a gun with a twig as to not sully the evidence, and then immediately puts his hand on the grip of the gun.
Yeah.
Why would you spend the time to pick it up with a stick? I just
Man, I didn't pick up on that one. I gotta watch it again. And this was probably Winona Ryder's favorite movie that she's ever done, if not her favorite movie of all time. She says that she's watched it over 50 times.
Really?
okay.
She loves it that much, and usually actors don't even ever watch their own movies. But
So they say.
so they say, right? But
I don't ever listen to this podcast either.
Yeah, I will not listen to this as soon as we get done.
right. They'd be like, God, I wish I would have said this.
So this director, Michael Lehrman, they like I said, they wanted Stanley Kubrick. They were going for this big director. This was like his first movie. He had only done like one short before this, so the fact that this is his first movie, I mean, it's really impressive. I think how well it's done and how many of these touches are in there. It's such a a classic movie. He didn't go on to do a whole lot of big stuff after this. And it's a really eclectic mix of movies that he made.
Well,
And
he
not,
also
not many that were like this one.
No.
He did Hudson Hawk,
he did Hudson Hawk, another great Bruce Willis.
a complete bomb.
Yeah,
He did Airheads.
we've
that's
touched
stupid
on
comedy. He did The Truth About Cats and Dogs. I mean, he covered the bases here with all kinds of different movies.
Mhm.
So I don't know.
One thing I read about him is that I guess it's a commonplace culture thing where screenwriters will often, when they're teenagers, they did work at video stores like Blockbuster, and that's what he was. And he didn't even realize that was a thing. But it was a lot of screenwriters came out of that, which is interesting because I just watched a couple of nights ago the last Blockbuster.
I
It's a
just
documentary
added
on-
that to my list.
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, and that's touched on a little bit where there's a few famous people like actors and screenwriters that got their start in Blockbuster because they love movies so much.
And you have time to write your screenplay while you're, waiting for people to rent movies.
Well, or you just can watch any movie that you want and learn what you want and go from there. Anything else to touch on Heathers before we move on to?
I have exhausted the notes that I took on this movie.
I have as
well. Yep.
All right.
I think we can move on to the top 5 TV.
So yeah, we talked a movie here. We hit 3 movies this year because we've mentioned the movies were so great and vast, but we like to talk about TV, so we figured this would be the best place to fit that in. So what do you guys remember about TV in 1989?
Well, the TV. Oh, yeah.
Heather, it's Heather's turn.
This I was thinking about. This is kind of like Heather's, but we should call this podcast Brian's.
I was going to say
because you're Brad. You're like the Veronica of our group.
I was going to say we should call ourselves Giffords.
All right.
Go ahead, Giff.
Well, what I like about researching the television from this time for me personally is I only have to look through what was playing on 2 different networks at the time, ABC and CBS, because that's all I got out on the farm. So I just went through and marked down all the television shows that I had watched and came up with this wonderful top 5 list. And I do only have 5. So at number 5, I have Perfect Strangers. I love me some Belky Bartakamus.
Do you remember, Gifford, in middle school when you and I used to do the Meepopian Dance of Joy?
Yes.
Did that a couple of times.
I always thought Erdman was a part of that.
Oh, no.
Well, he might have been a fill-in.
Okay.
But yes.
It's easy to mix him and Pete up.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
It's easy for Pete to mix Erdman
to mix him and Pete up.
A lot of people used to think that we look alike.
Yeah. And they look like the Proclaimers.
Yes.
Yeah.
At number 4, I had Doogie Howser, MD. And oddly enough, I've just started rewatching How I Met Your Mother, and there was
I kind of want to do that.
Oh, the first few seasons are so good. I
loved it. I watched that show from the get-go.
Yeah, but that was one where I just hung on because I just wanted to see how it ended, like the last couple seasons. But anyway, at the end of the episode, right before Barney jumps into bed with a woman, he's sitting at his computer writing, and it has the Doogie Howser sound music. Like he did at the end of all the.
They did a lot of good references like that on that show. I liked that show all the way to the ending. I mean, I'm glad it ended when it did. It was time to be done, but I really enjoyed it. There were some episodes here and there that learned, but for the most part, that was one that really did a great job all the way through, I thought.
Well, we may have to cover that when the time comes.
It could come up.
Number 3 on my list, Growing Pains, the Seaver family.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, wonderful show. And that was beat out just slightly by my number 2, Who's the Boss, because Alyssa Milano was my first celebrity crush.
So really? Mine was Mona. My celebrity
crush was Mona. I don't doubt that. And number 1, The Wonder Years.
I knew it.
Love The Wonder Years. It was
this is the year it started, or was it 88?
It was 88, so it would have been end of first season.
Yeah, so really it's right at the beginning.
Yep. So that was my.
We were in 7th grade when that show started. We were the same age as those kids. That took us by storm. It was so amazing.
Yeah, it was just set 20 years before, but the characters were in the exact grades as we were. Yeah.
To think that if you made that movie now, it'd be set in 2000. Oh my God, that is so weird.
Yeah.
Because it was like a whole different time. Oh God, that's crazy.
So that was my top 5 TV.
Yep, that's heavy on the old ABC there.
Yeah. Didn't have to go far.
There's actually a couple I'm surprised you didn't name. Head of the Class.
I have it on my list of what I watched.
Yes.
It didn't make my top 5.
You did say Who's the Boss. Okay. And actually a lot of my other side ones are from NBC, so that almost all of them are actually.
Right.
Oh, Mr. Belvedere though, you missed that one.
No, I have it on my list of what I watched, but I didn't put it in my top 5.
Although
if you'd like, I would love to go through all the shows that I wrote down, but I
I
figured
think by this time, Mr. Belvedere was kind of finally running its course for me because it started in like '85 actually, and I loved that show as a kid.
That was
Yep.
a great show. How come
I
that
don't
show
think it was a
never
great
on
show,
in, like,
but
I
Bob
thought it was.
Uecker, though,
I
babe.
remember
I mean,
it being good.
Bob Euchre's the man.
All right.
all right, what you want to go next, Pete, or you want to finish it?
Yeah, I can go with mine.
Yeah.
I got Cosby Show, which I do not condone any of the actions of the main actor. So I just enjoyed the show at the time. So I don't want people all over social media about. Never mind.
That's
I
the
had-
one that, and we brought it up on our lost episode, but the Cosby Show for me, this is the year where like it's done. Like it was the best show ever for the first like 4 to 5 seasons, and
Yeah.
this is the year where I'm not. It's not even on my list because it just got bad quick, and I gave up on it. I probably was still watching it sometimes, but it was not good.
I had then I had Cheers, The Wonder Years, Who's the Boss, Growing Pains, and The Simpsons. This was right when Simpsons was starting
Yep.
to
Yep.
become a thing, right? Another one that I came across as I was researching for the show. Do you guys remember the show Dear John?
Oh yeah, I love that show.
Oh,
I thought it was Judd Hirsch, and yeah, I remember that I loved the show. I don't remember very many details of it, but I
Well,
but
it basically took the place of Night Court when they started moving shows around and broke up the Thursday night lineup. That was one, and that's one of the few that actually lasted a couple seasons and was a decent hit anyway.
yeah.
Yep,
So-
I watched that show. He was like a psychiatrist, right? Wasn't he?
I think he was a psychiatrist that his wife had left him.
Yeah, that
and
sounds
so
right.
He's trying to pick up his own life and everything.
Oh.
That's why it was called Dear John.
And who was there? Wasn't there, or am I thinking of? I was thinking there was a side character in there that was like kind of one of those funny guys that we liked. Am I right on that? Or I'm thinking of Jim J.
I
Bullock,
don't
but it
remember.
wasn't him.
That was Too Close for Comfort.
I know.
Different year, but another great show. We'll talk about in another episode.
Oh, well, no. Okay. The guy I was picturing was Jerry Burns. Do you remember him? Not the Vikings coach.
the Vikings coach?
No.
That would have been something.
Right. That would have to been on HBO.
You'd recognize him if you're not sure him by name, but that's what I was thinking of. Jerry Burns was like the supporting character.
It's not television. It's Jerry Burns swearing at you. That's what that would be.
All right. That covers everything I wanted to say, so we can turn it back over to Brad.
Okay. So, I've got my list here of shows I watched. So you mentioned The Simpsons started that year. It was actually, it was December 17th is when the Christmas episode first aired, which was the original episode. So just barely snuck in that year.
That was the first
They got-
episode?
Yeah, the one where
Wow.
they get the dog.
Mm-hmm.
And his little helper. That's why they named him.
But then
that.
I'm surprised you didn't mention, Pete, this is also the year that the Seinfeld pilot aired too.
You know, I
Aired in the summer of '89. This one episode aired by itself.
I came across that one. I don't remember specifically if I actually got into Seinfeld in that time frame though. So
No, you didn't,
yeah.
because that was the only episode that aired, and none of us saw
No,
it.
you didn't.
right, and that's why I guess I didn't write it down.
No,
So,
it's not on my top. I just thought we should mention that this is the year it started because a lot of people don't remember it being that long ago.
right.
So I mentioned Who's the Boss, Mr. Belvedere, Growing Pains, Head of the Class. You said Wonder Years, but here are the NBC shows that I listed. So you said Dear John, but nobody said Family Ties. This is the year that ended, was '89.
Oh
I bet you watched a lot of these shows, Pete. Day by Day. Did you watch that show?
no,
It actually had Julia Louis-Dreyfus in it,
really?
and
I don't remember that show at all.
from Melrose Place, the blonde. What was her name? She was in that show too. They were like two of the main characters in that show.
Courtney Thorne Smith.
That's it. Yep.
It's
She was
like I
a
read your mind.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
A Different World.
Yeah,
I guess I did put the Cosby Show on my side list here. Night Court was still on. The Hogan Family. After
yeah.
Valerie had left,
Valerie.
so Valerie's family. Now it's the Hogan Family.
That was Sandy Duncan, right?
Yep, Sandy Duncan, Jason Bateman. Here's one you didn't say that I know you liked. My Two Dads.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
There we
Paul
go.
Reiser, Greg Evigan,
Yep. And
Dick Butkus.
what was her name? The girl.
I don't remember. But I used to have a big crush on her.
Stacy Keach.
Stacy Keach played Mike Hammer and was a guy.
Yeah, I was
know
gonna say
that.
Stacy
I knew
Keach
it
is a
wasn't
man.
right,
That's
but
a
it's
man,
not,
man.
So my top 5. I'm going to tell you who the girl from My Two Dads was here in just 1 second. My top 5 was Saturday Night Live.
Wow.
Because this is like the year where I pretty much discovered it and started watching it. Stacy Keenan.
Oh. Okay.
No, sir, we do not pronounce or spell our last names the same.
It would have been a very interesting
Saturday Night
show.
Live was, this is like, you know, church chat. Actually, I think the first Wayne's World aired in like 1989 too. This is the year where like Mike Myers started, and you've got Dana Carvey, so I had to include that. Number 4, nobody mentioned Alf.
Oh, yes.
You know, Alf.
I didn't get that channel.
I know. I was a big fan of Alf. That was a fun one. It's a pretty stupid show. And the dad was, I always thought, the worst actor of all time. And you never really understood why he was so bad if he was trying to do something. But I think he was just a weird actor. And I don't know.
Max, you're referring to Max Wright.
Yep, Max.
And the lady that played Jerry Seinfeld's mom was a regular on Alf as well. She played the next door neighbor, and she was on basically every episode. She was a cast member.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I know who. Yep, you're right. Mrs. Oh God, I can think of their names too. Dang it! All right, I'm gonna move on though. Look that one up.
I'm on it.
Number 3. Here's another one that Gifford, you had this channel, and I'm surprised nobody mentioned. Newhart.
Yeah, I didn't really watch.
Oh.
I mean, I have it on my list of things I watched, but it wasn't in my top.
Well,
5.
I love Newhart, and it actually, so 89, 90 was the last year. I almost picked Newhart for our podcast for 89 because I thought that was the final episode, because that's one of the all-time classic final episodes that everybody talks about. But it actually aired in 90. I thought it ended in 89, but it was 89, 90. So I put it at number 3, and we'll have to discuss the finale in 1990.
Newhart was probably the perfect sitcom.
It was up there. It was great.
Oh my God, that was
It's
hilarious.
funny because we loved it as kids, but you know, it's not kid friendly. But it was written in a way that like we could watch. You know, you had Larry, Daryl, and Daryl, and we could laugh at it and watch it, even though it was something we could all watch as a family. My mom and dad loved it. We all watched it.
Well, I used to love, not to get off on a tangent, but Tom Poston, that was his name.
Oh yeah, I love George.
He was, yeah, that was okay. Yeah, George on that show.
I guess,
oh my God, he was good.
The difference with Newhart is it's a family type show that you could all watch, but there were no kids. It's not like Growing Pains or The Cosby Show. There's no kids.
Right.
Right.
So that's what I meant by, you know, it's all adults, but still the humor was very relatable to a kid like me. Number 2, I had The Wonder Years because, yep, we already said that was huge. And number 1 was Cheers.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is like, I mean, this is Cheers at one of its peaks. And by this time, I'm old enough to like I'm watching Cheers every week. And that's just can't miss television right there. So that's a really good top 5. I love those shows.
Rachel Okmonic.
Okmonic.
Yeah.
Okmonic.
Okmonic.
Okmonic. That was it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
You're welcome.
All right. Does that wrap it up?
That's going to end this year, man.
If so, we will close the yearbook on 1989. Thank you very much for listening. We're going to play a little Preacher Row for you. Thanks for listening.
We will see you next year.
Bye.
I forgot. My daughter said I shouldn't say bye because she overheard me. I should say peace out is what she told me. So peace out.
Bye.
See ya.
Standing on my own 2 feet. gonna comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your song is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start jumping on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do. Aim high if you want to.